I've actually read an article translated from a Japanese magazine where the Japanese guy is saying to let your trees get a little bit dry before you repot them. That way it's easier to get the old growing medium fall away from the roots. Now I have to say that Marco, my teacher, absolutely poo-poos that. He thinks it's just way too dangerous and unnecessary, and would certainly not be appropriate for things like junipers and pines, spruce. Whether it would be more appropriate for a maple of some kind to do that, it may just simply be from the point of view of the person doing the repotting that it's a slightly more pleasant job to do. If the root ball, if you can imagine this growing medium a little bit drier, just simply falling away. Generally, I wouldn't advise you to do that, to let it get dry before you open the root ball up. Then I would be suggesting that you spray the roots to keep them wet anyway, so it seems a bit self-defeating. Now, this really does enable me to have a really good look at the nebari. Now, we've got a piece of dead root there.
How do you know it's dead?
Because it was kind of brown and had nothing growing out the end of it. It's got a healthy root, reasonably healthy growing here, but looking at it, I'm thinking, can I live without it as part of the nebari? And I think I can, because I would anticipate, if not today, then the next repotting, possibly the soil could end up being here rather than it was here. So what I've done is to possibly at least give me the option in the future of dropping the soil level a tiny little bit. Bearing in mind all the time what I was saying about you cannot improve root balls without pruning them. Here's this is not part of the nebari because it's not actually at the surface, and it's really quite big. It's got a nasty kink in it, so I actually think we can cut that back here. Now there will be new roots grow from here, and they will hopefully grow in a nice flat spoke-like fashion out towards the end. Here's a root that's increasingly coming across the line of the other roots, and I really want the roots from here to be coming in a more radial way. So I can quite safely cut that back to there, because again the new roots will grow from that cut, and they will grow hopefully in a nice radial sort of fashion. This is a kind of exercise it's a luxury that you have when you've got such a huge mass of roots that we've got here. And also we're dealing with a tree that is patently really healthy. You could argue that I'm a fraction late in doing it because the buds are almost open, but again you've got to trust the fact that I can make a judgment that it's perfectly safe to do so. And of course it's not my tree. Because you realise that that is said in jest, because Peter Warren, who owns this tree, is half my age and could easily beat me to a pulp. I get that wrong. Now here's an interesting bit of pruning that can be done. Are they separate? Yeah. Perfectly good root here. May eventually, particularly if we cut this off, the root underneath it could well become part of the nebari in the future. But this would spoil it, because it's crossing the root, it's going in the wrong direction. So that root can certainly come back to there. And actually I think this, there's a big lumpy end here with a great mass of roots coming off it. I'd quite like to just shorten that a bit. Now the reason that I'm doing the nebari first, that's what I would describe this exercise as, rather than trimming all my ends, is because I know that in the course of doing what I'm doing now, a proportion of my long ends are going to go anyway. And when they're gone, because I've done this part of the exercise, I can make a much better judgment about just how much to shorten what I've got left. So it's a case of kind of doing things in the right order for the safety's sake of the root ball. But I'm looking all the time to try and improve the direction of the roots. And you know, sometimes you don't even need to wire them. So here I've got my fingers on this root and it was here, and simply by manipulating it with your fingers, bearing in mind that I'll try and remember to have a look at this root when I put this grain medium in, I can probably put it there, and when I put the grain medium in, it'll probably stay there. If it clearly wouldn't, I would be quite happy to put a piece of wire on that, as if I was wiring a branch, and just bend it round into that position. Okay, so the wire's going to stay on for 4 years maybe, and may well be cutting in. But even if this ends up being part of the surface nebari, the little tiny bit of wire scarring that's going to be as a result, and even if it got so badly buried that I couldn't take the wire off, I wouldn't be unduly bothered about that, because I could allow the tree eventually to grow around it and disappear, the wire, like my metal fence railing in my oak tree. Just wondering whether to remove that or not. Probably not, it's sort of well underneath the nebari. That actually bit that I pruned before can go back a little bit more, sorry. Look at this root here. It's got some good stuff on, but it's going right round the corner. I could prune it here, but I'm still taking the root round the corner. I could prune it here, but actually that's sending the root, when it grows downwards. If I prune it here, I've actually still got a little root here that's still alive, and it's in the perfect place to take that root onward into the position I want it to be. That's okay there. Now here's a root that you would think is quite a good place. It's in its own space here, but it's emerging right on the top of what is part of the nebari. So I'd be inclined to actually do that. So as to encourage the roots to come to develop from here rather than from here, because in 5 or 10 years time the root I've just cut off, which sort of come up and then bent down, it's just going to get more and more noticeable. The swelling here is going to get greater and become more ugly than ever. So we've kind of got rid of that and hopefully put the roots in a slightly better path here. Here we've got know what to do about this. It's kind of hardly low enough to be a good part of the nebari. Particularly means we would have to bury so much of what we've got, but it depends whether we've got anything underneath it that we can use. Probably not. Thing is, even on a good Japanese tree, almost nothing's perfect. Nothing's going to be exactly how you want it to be. So you're always going to be in a position of having to make some compromises on what would otherwise be hopefully an ideal situation. On balance, I'm tempted to leave that. Stub off the top. No, there's that underneath, but even that's coming far too sideways, it's coming too lateral. to be a replacement for the root I might otherwise have taken off. Notice it when I can, I'll use my fingers to bring a root that was tangled up down in here and actually bring it in a radial way out. And this is all part of making the root system as efficient as we possibly can. Because by the time we've shortened all the long stuff, my plan is to have, you know, no roots on this tree more than about 6 to 7 inches away from the base of the trunk. And that way we can actually make the tree work in even more of an efficient way than it is now. Here we had a root that divided here into a nice fine root, but the stronger root was going around the corner. So we don't need that, or we can eliminate that. Now, this is the right level. This lateral root here is the right level for the nebari, but it's kind of at right angles to the spoke roots. If this root was coming down here, it would be a much better shape. But actually, we can get rid of it altogether because there's loads of roots underneath it that will develop and become a more attractive part of the root ball. Here's something that sticks up a little bit out of the line of the plane of the root ball that we've got. Here's a dogleg root can come off. Here's another root coming out the top of the nebari, but on the other hand, it's low enough down, almost certainly, to end up either at ground level or below the surface of the soil. You know, I think that in a future repotting, this root will probably come off, because by then, what's underneath it will be swelling up even more, and we could possibly lift the whole tree half an inch in the pot anyway, to lower the top surface of the soil, so that we wouldn't actually need this thing. But for the time being, I think we can probably leave it, or we should probably leave it, but I will still shorten it, I think. There's a bit underneath which is going literally downwards, so that can come away. And shorten that. As I shorten it, I begin to think, take it up. That's the thing about doing things in stages is that you've always got an option. If I'd cut it off straight away and decided, no, that was the wrong thing to do, too late. The reason I'm cutting that is because that's completely at right angles to our spoke roots. It's going underneath there, and it kind of makes space for other roots to go in. Within a pot like this, the space available to the roots is quite limited, obviously. So you don't want the space taken up by big roots, and you don't want the space taken up by roots that are not active on behalf of the tree, because they're either very weak or they're, you know, big knobbly things with nothing much growing on them. So the more you can actually remove those out of the way, it actually makes space for good roots to take their place. Now, at the end of this exercise, purely on examining the tree before and after, you may come to the conclusion that possibly, from this morning to now, maybe the root ball, the nebari doesn't look quite as good as it did. But I'm pretty certain that what I'm doing to this tree will make such a difference that by the time the next repot is done in 4 years' time, then the roots that we've left to develop will be developing in the right way, in the right direction. They will be nice short roots, so they'll work very efficiently, and we'll have a generally much better root system altogether. So I am going to take this root off at the back. By now, of course, I can pretty much see what we've got on the end of it. So the bit that disappears back over there. I'll just get that out. So, there. look how little I'm interfering with the overall amount of roots if I take that away. And for sure we can make that good over the next few years. I think that the way this root ball is looking now, I would anticipate that that the next time this repot is done in 4 years' time, we really will lower the surface of the soil by maybe as much as ½ an inch, which will begin to bring into play some of these roots that you can see here, which are, today will actually end up being buried, but in the future it may be possible to expose them as part of the nebari. So we can make some things which are quite clearly an improvement on the day, and some things that might initially appear to be to make the nebari slightly less attractive, but in the long run are going to lead to a better root ball. So having done all I want to do on the nebari.